By the way, we are going live here, guys. Sorry, I just sprung that. I am fired up, footballers.
Fired up, footballers. We're live.
We are live.
All right.
Welcome. We'll let people file in, but welcome to the stream here with Daniel Workman. Oh, you got the you can.
How's it going, Dan?
Doing well, guys.
Dan, you just want to introduce yourself real quick to the crowd?
Sure. So I do a daily podcast called Soccer Works. I have a few businesses that I own and run, and a few of them are integrated with soccer and technology and creative, and just a big fan of the beautiful game of soccer. Had the privilege and an honor to run Eric Wynalda's campaign for president of US Soccer last year.
You were running
that? Okay.
Yeah.
So you talked with Eric?
Yeah. We're good buddies.
Oh, no way.
Wow, I did not know that. That's awesome.
His Twitter game has been strong recently.
We would love for him to become the Fire general manager at some
Oh
point.
my God, yeah. We always thought about that.
He played for the Fire. He would love to coach the Fire if I'm not speaking too much out of turn one day.
Ooh, plant the seed. Dan, you got to plant the seed for the Chicago people.
But he's doing some good things in Vegas. And I'll be out there for their home opener in March, and get to watch his first home match of the USL season out there. So
it's awesome.
But so that's just a little bit of kind of background. The coolest, I guess, thing for me is people ask me, how did Eric and I get connected? How did I get connected to a bunch of people around the world? And truly, it's social media. Primarily Twitter, but
that's how I connected with you. I just saw your work.
Yeah, and so I've got friends and clients in Europe and all over America, and most of that was cultivated just through relationships built on Twitter, and then it became text messages, and then it became phone conversations, and then it became meeting people in person and becoming friends and colleagues and what have you. So for anybody out there who wants to make a difference in the game, my biggest recommendation is just keep providing value to the community and in whatever way you can, whether that's helping out locally or doing research and posting things online, helpful comments, etc. And you never know what doors will open up down the road.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I want to know a little bit more. So how did you get started with soccer? Did you play as a young kid growing up, and how did you get involved into the behind the scenes aspect of soccer?
So my story with soccer is really a perfect picture of the dysfunction that is the U.S. soccer system. I grew up in South Alabama, like right next to Florida. So right on the Gulf of Mexico. If you look at the state of Alabama, there's a little leg of Alabama that touches the Gulf of Mexico.
Is that like Gulf Shores region? Okay.
Yeah. So you guys are from Chicago, right? So
it's freezing. It's freezing right
now. So we get a lot of people from Chicago that take 65 straight south to come to the beach, Gulf Shores. So
absolutely.
But yeah, that's the county where I live. So I'm like 30 minutes from the beach and 10 minutes from the bay. And growing up here, college football is king, still is. And then obviously some baseball, and it's still pretty big. We're the home of Hank Aaron, and birthplace of Hank Aaron, and so many other Major League Baseball Hall of Famers are from Mobile. Jake Peavy, more recently, a great pitcher.
Ex-White Sox.
He was ex-White Sox. I liked him better when he was with the Red Sox, being a Red Sox fan. But
he was better in San Diego.
Yeah, Padres. Yeah, Padres.
Sure, he was. And I'll actually get back to Jake Peavy a little later on. We're kind of going through some things.
Ooh.
Because I think if people were to learn his story and understand how that could work in soccer, would actually be a great example of what we could and should be doing in U.S. soccer. But my story is basically that I grew up in a soccer wasteland. We didn't have access to programming. There was very little organized around in the area. Soccer was not a part of my family culture. And so my introduction to the game actually came when one of my best friends, when I was 4 years old, he and his family moved away to Brazil and went to be missionaries. And they came back a couple years later and to visit for a few months. And I came over to their house to ask them if they wanted to play some, football or baseball or basketball. And they said, no, we don't play that. We play real football. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, in America, you call it soccer, but it's called football. And I was like, okay. So they rolled a ball out and we started playing. And so that became my introduction. I didn't grow up with any organized soccer at all. Like I said, it just wasn't around. And, I thought about playing for the high school team, but there was just some weird quirks with our school and setup. I just wasn't able to work it into my schedule. So when my wife and I were engaged, I'll never forget one night we were at dinner and I just said to her, like, look, one day when we have kids, I want our kids to have the opportunity that I didn't have, which is when they're growing up. I would love for them to, play baseball in the spring, soccer in the fall, and then they can figure it out from there. They may hate sports altogether. They may like baseball over soccer. They may like soccer over baseball. Or they may go, hey, we don't like either of these. We want to be a tennis player or a golfer or something.
That's kind of what it was for us. We played soccer, basketball. I played hockey, ice hockey.
Yeah, settled on soccer.
And we kind of all settled on soccer. I mean, but we all still dabble in the other sports too.
Sure, absolutely. And so, really, having my oldest son really kind of like kicked all of that into high gear. So what was just kind of a casual interest, loving the sport, but not heavily involved in the sport, but just, watched it from afar as a fan occasionally, what you could get on TV, obviously World Cups, things like that, and follow the sport, as much as you could in the late 90s, early 2000s. Once I had my oldest son, then we were kind of heading down that path, kind of all in, and so he started playing at 3, and I was coaching him, and so at the same time I was, trying to figure out, like, what am I doing? How should the game be played? And so, for me, I'm a business guy, I'm a creative business guy, and so I'm always studying success and looking at, what works. And it was obvious to me, and for anybody with any idea of reality, that the U.S. is just not very good at soccer on a global level. So I started looking at other countries, who plays soccer at a high level, and what does their game look like? What does their system look like? And so kind of going through that.
Like the Dutch?
Yeah, the Dutch. I'm a massive fan of Spanish soccer. La Liga is by far my favorite league to watch.
We're EPLers.
Yeah, we're hardcore EPLers.
Yeah. So I love, like, Barcelona is my favorite club. It was the club that in my kind of whole journey of just like going, head first into all of this. A long time ago, I just was like, that's the club that I connected with and on the field. And so, I watch soccer from all leagues around the world, but, that's just my favorite. And so in doing that, I just kind of started taking what I was learning, trying to start passing it on to my kid, and and just kind of have kept that going. I have 2 boys now, and so they both play soccer. They're 13 and 8, and I've indoctrinated them with Barcelona, and I have one rule in my house. So like when you grow up in Alabama, you get asked a few questions. So for anybody that's watching or listening to this, I'm just gonna give you a heads up. If you ever come to Alabama, if you ever move to Alabama, they're gonna ask you a few questions. And so one of the questions they're gonna ask you is, where do you go to church? That's a cultural thing. They always ask, right? So where do you go to church? And the second question, or the first question, depending on who you're talking to, is Alabama or Auburn.
Yeah.
Is it Roll Tide or War Eagle?
Yeah.
Right. And so in my house, I told them I really don't care who you root for in any sport. I prefer that you hate the Yankees like I do. I prefer that you hate North Carolina basketball as I'm a Duke fan.
Duke.
I hope that you don't root for Auburn and that you like Alabama football.
That's gonna be fun. How as a father you imprint your own sports interest on your kid, and you start that love for certain teams.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Honestly, they really love soccer so much. They really don't like the other sports. They don't watch American football at all. They watch a little basketball with me, but I took them to
La
a
Liga?
free
Do they watch La
baseball
Liga
game
with
this
you?
summer, and they didn't care at all.
Wow.
They were like, "This is boring," let's go play soccer.
That's
That's
funny.
awesome. I love that.
It's so funny because we'll have friends who are the complete opposite, who are like, soccer boring, and American sports, those are exciting.
In order to be a really good soccer player too, it's more than a game. It's a lifestyle. It's like
soccer watcher.
it's everything. Like your universe is soccer, and that's how it was for me growing up. And I'm sure it sounds like that's what's going on with your voice. So that's awesome that they care about the game.
It absolutely is. And so the one rule that I set in my house is like, you can like Barcelona or not. I would prefer that you like Barcelona. And every time I go overseas and come back with Barcelona stuff, I hope you don't burn it, that you love it and you wear it and all of those things. But you can like any club in the world except one. You cannot be a Madrid fan and live in my house. So they know that's the rule. There's no Real Madrid in my house. You can do anything else but Madrid. And so whenever my oldest, also I like Liverpool in the Premier League, and I root for them. They're probably my second favorite club behind Barcelona, and my oldest likes Liverpool, but I think he kind of likes Liverpool because I like Liverpool, but he really would rather like Man City.
Oh, no.
We're United fans. We're big time United fans.
Yeah. So poor things. We'll pray for you down here.
Hey.
So
The form's been better.
So we're. He said the other day, like, yeah, I kind of like Man City. Look, you can like whoever you like. I love Pep. So
Pep.
Well, funny, we were Pep haters at first.
We were
like,
Pep detractors.
We're like, Barcelona, Bayern. Of course, this guy's gonna win. And then, he struggled a little bit when he got to Man City, but now it's just like, dang, you can totally tell this guy is special.
He's on the cutting edge of what works, and as is Klopp. And I was listening to a modern soccer coaching podcast the other day, where he kind of, that seems to be that counter-attacking, space exploitation game is, of course,
pressing. It's changed. It's completely changed.
That's where the game's going.
Work rate.
And some guys aren't there yet.
Like Özil.
Right.
Guys like Özil are being phased out. You almost see strikers like Higuain.
It's just like
those
the NHL.
Old school strikers are kind of getting.
The game's
be like
changing.
Rashfords, Martials, just these all-around speedster, do everything,
Right. Well, and in Liverpool's case, they don't have that as a number 9. They have a Firmino that's really plays almost like a false 9.
Yeah, totally.
You know, he really kind of drops in and becomes playmaker as much as he is striker. And, you know, I actually think that Firmino would thrive at Barcelona.
Oh, over Coutinho?
Because, oh my gosh, I wish Coutinho would go back to Serie A. Like, don't even come back to Liverpool. Just go on and get out of there. Jeez Louise.
Wow, that bad. Massively overrated.
I thought when he came that he would. I thought he would be good, and the reason why I thought he would be good was because of who came before him, and that was Suarez. So when Suarez left Liverpool to go to Barcelona, everybody was like, "How could Barcelona bring a guy in that got a red card at the 2014 World Cup for biting? Like, how can you bring this guy to?" But
and the handball.
Suarez as a player, he's a gamer.
He's a special player.
Yeah, I mean, for me, not now because he's on the downhill in terms of physical, but like 2-3 years ago, I mean, I above everybody, including
Luis Suarez,
Lewandowski, and everybody, I thought Suarez was the best number 9 in the world because of the way he played. It was just he was not just a give me the ball. He was always a complimentary player as well, as a striker, and I just loved it. And his work rate was phenomenal. And when he came to Barcelona, he adjusted some things, and I think him and Messi bonding, becoming really, really close, I think helped kind of level him out on the field in terms of some of the emotional, flare-ups or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he really quickly adapted to the culture of Barcelona as a club compared to Coutinho. And I'm thinking Coutinho's going to come in and he's going to take his cues from Suarez, who made the same move from Liverpool to Barcelona, made some, adaptations and became this really, really potent player. And then you watch him, and he's been there a year, and you're like, dude, he is lost. He's got no confidence, and it's like he dribbles when he should pass. He should pass when he should dribble. There are so many times I'm watching a match, and it's like Messi's standing there waiting on the ball, and he'll, like, literally have his head down, just dribbling, like, right into Messi, and Messi's looking at him like, what are you doing? I don't know.
When we saw the transfer fee for him, we were very surprised. We're like, I forgot how much he got, but he got a lot of money for Coutinho. Wasn't it like
$120 million?
Is that?
Yeah,
it was outrageous. I was like, we were like, we wouldn't pay $30 million for this guy.
That was our assessment.
We're like, what?
Right.
We're like, what?
No way.
Anyways, let's get into
some American soccer
here. While you are here, Jamesy, which question do you want to start with
Let's start out with the status quo of U.S. soccer culture. You were alluding to it earlier. In parts of America, it's non-existent. In other parts of America,
like in Chicago,
it's they're all about it. And then in other parts of America, it's kind of like a passing thing. It's there. In Chicago, it's kind of there, but also there's a great youth circuit, California youth circuit. Good following stuff. But where is U.S. soccer right now? Right after we just missed a World Cup, we had a Fed election, which I wanted to kind of talk about because I wasn't really clear about what happened there. And so, yeah, where are we at with the U.S. soccer culture in 2019?
Well, look, a year after what should have been a changed election, we're really nowhere differently from a culture standpoint than we were a year ago after missing the World Cup.
I agree. And
it's a sad, conclusion or assessment, but it's the truth. I mean, as much as things have changed in terms of, some personnel and, some shuffling around of some different committee chairs, etc. We're really the same federation, and our problems were not just people problems. They're systemic problems. The culture that we have within U.S. soccer is overall it's an elitist culture. The thing that I do what?
The pay to play aspect of it.
Well, yeah, but it's pay to play on all levels, from professional all the way down. And you know what I look at when I look at systems, when I'm analyzing systems and cultures and macro level conversations, is I'm always coming at it from this approach that you are what you are structured to be. If you were to bake a pie and you put all of the ingredients into a rectangle pan, throw it in the oven, when you bring it out, it's not going to be round. It's going to be rectangle.
I love it. That's a great metaphor. Absolutely.
You know, and yet in U.S. soccer, we keep doing the same things, right?
Mm-hmm.
What substantive
6,000 people at the last game, right? At the last home match.
Right. I mean, what have we substantively changed about the system? Right. I mean,
we've added academy systems. Like that's
the
about it.
Systems itself. Like, what have we actually changed about our system? I would argue that even the academy system didn't change anything. It's more of what we were already doing.
Yeah.
It's not a change in the system. They tried to sell it as a change in the system, but it's actually not. It's more of the same elitist.
It's just club, it's just club
DNA.
Team on steroids. Yeah,
and it's almost becoming prohibitive for a player to even think about going to the academy. It's like if you want to jump to Europe at the first bit, you can, because some people get trapped in MLS, as we could see with this Gutman situation.
Yeah, I mean totally, and
for the fire,
and that's why for me, I'm always looking at, and I'm talking on the SoccerWorks podcast and with people that work in and around U.S. soccer and American soccer on all levels. I'm always having these conversations about the macro of the system. You know, like we can say, hey, we want to have a better national team. You know, a lot of people have thought, well, let's just go find the right coach. If we just get the right coach, and it's like, look, this is nothing for or against Greg Berhalter. I have friends of mine who know him very well. They speak very highly of him. He's the first coach I've seen in quite a few years who seemed to have an idea of how he wanted to try to play in these last two games, and for that's an improvement. But to
tactical identity.
You know, to think that in and of itself is going to solve our systemic and cultural problems, you're being naive. We haven't changed anything about culture and system, because even though you may have him as a coach, you know, if you have players who are really, really good but don't have access to the system, are they ever going to find their way into a national team setup? No. And they may be better, light years better than what we think are our best players. And those are all system issues of what I call the elitist system, where it's a closed system of gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers are oftentimes people and personnel, but it's gatekeeping from the standpoint of socioeconomics.
Do most of these people have soccer backgrounds, or do you think it's just a monetary thing?
Say that again?
Do most of these people in charge of these clubs in U.S. soccer, these higher-ups, do they have soccer backgrounds, or are they just like businessmen?
I think you have a combination of both. I mean, if you look at U.S. soccer at the highest levels, there's not a great depth of soccer experience prior to whatever it is that they're doing now. So you don't see, you know, people on our board that have, you know, decades and decades of experience, especially at you know, maybe some overseas or high level positions. Americans just generally have not been there. So you have a little bit of, you know, the blind leading the blind at times, it seems like, on some of the soccer side of things. And there's a lot more focus on, you know, the business and economics. And, you know, one of the things that I talked about a lot with state associations last year during the presidential election was the fact that the federation, you know, at the time, Sunil Gulati, Carlos Cordeiro, they were going around and they were trying to champion, as well as Don Garber, champion this idea that the Federation had $150 million surplus, and that this was somehow this massive coup, this massive success. Like, look at what we've done. Give us a chance. We'll keep building. The Federation. We're good.
Yeah, but who cares? We missed the World Cup.
I agree with you on the field, but I'm talking about on the business side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're just having a conversation in the area where they're the most comfortable,
Okay.
in terms of trying to talk about the business of soccer and the sport, they were touting a $150 million surplus. Now, in my view, that is pennies on the dollar of what it should be. I mean, if you look at Europe annually, the collective TV revenue in Europe is more than $14 billion.
Oh my
per year.
gosh!
And MLS gets 94 million or 96 million.
No, let me correct you. MLS does not get 90 million. MLS shares 90 million with the U.S. Soccer Federation because that is a shared revenue with the U.S. national teams through their no-bid contract with Soccer United Marketing. The company SUM, which is the same set of owners that own Major League Soccer, own Soccer United Marketing. They have their own commissioner who sits on the board of U.S. Soccer, who is the CEO, who earned a multi-million-dollar bonus as the CEO of Soccer United Marketing a year ago, granting himself a no-bid contract to represent the United States Soccer Federation with their TV rights deals, and then they split the money. And the best that they could do was a $90 million a year. The truth is that MLS couldn't get a TV deal without bundling it with the Federation.
That's crazy.
No one wanted them. ESPN wanted out.
Wow.
NBC Sports got out.
Well, everyone watches the Prem. Everyone watches the Prem, La Liga. I mean, there's soccer
Liga
watchers
MX
here, but they're watching different leagues.
Liga MX is probably more popular in Chicago.
Probably.
Liga MX is the most watched league in America.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, not surprised.
So it beats the Premier League hands down on a regular basis with numbers.
So there's this high level collusion at the top, which is just it reeks of this of just like of
it's I watched this on Netflix. It's called Becoming Champions, and like it takes you through like England, Brazil, and all these nations that become football powerhouses, and these kids are just playing soccer in the streets anywhere they can from day one, and it's just like that culture also is in here as well, and so that's another problem with the American football.
Rondos, there's rondos everywhere, right?
Right. I'm a Spanish football fan. I love rondos.
Rondos are a game of soccer where it's just like a couple of small little box that you just kind of keep it in,
like 6v2,
and you get really good touches, and that's where a lot of these dribblers develop their skills and their fast twitch movements and their creativity.
They play a lot. They just play a lot of football.
They play all the time, and look, that goes back to culture, right? And systems and cultures, right? Our system and culture is set up where everything is programmed. If I'm going to play soccer, I'm going to play on Monday and Thursday when I go to my soccer practice, and I'm going to play when I go to my game.
Schedule, yeah.
But everything's programmed. It's all in a schedule. It's not. There's not a massive pickup culture, in most places.
Pickup culture died,
except for basketball.
Right. The local club where I live. Between all levels of the club and ages, they've got a little over 1,000 kids in the club, and when you go out on a Saturday to the park and there's no programming going on, and you show up, you might find 5 people at the park. I mean, it's just that what we've done in terms of U.S. soccer on a macro level is we have failed to educate and at the same time create a true soccer culture with our kids, and educating the parents. We've said, look, trust us with your kids, bring them to us. We're the experts. We're the paid coaches. Come to our programming, come to soccer practice, play in our games. But we have not emphasized the other aspects really where you're going to get better, which is those hours upon hours just getting out in the backyard or
oh my gosh,
in the street
discipline,
or in the park.
Discipline. You get taught discipline, and you have to work to win. And even if you work in the hardest, even if you put in the most amount of work, you're not guaranteed to win. And so you do learn some of these great life lessons. And it's 11 people working together on a giant field, and it takes all 11. So there's a lot of good things that come from playing football.
We know of a couple
whatever we're using.
We know of a couple players that went pro. Ned Grabavoy, Jed Zahner, just from our local area. Also, Georgi Mihailovic came out of Lamont or Lockport, and one of the things he was talking about in this little 2-minute video was just him playing every day in the backyard. Every day, just by himself. My neighbor lived next to Jed Zahner, and she was talking about how he would be every day in the backyard just by himself, juggling, playing by that. And some of these, the dedication to the that, even though we were good, we love soccer, we didn't. Yeah. I don't know. We would play soccer, but we didn't have that go in the backyard every day
that
style.
Unprogrammed time.
That unprogrammed time.
Right. And that's the differentiator between world class and American soccer is that gap.
Where does Antonio Valencia come from?
Ecuador.
Antonio Valencia comes from Ecuador, and he's one of the best. He's a world-class player. How did Ecuador beat us to developing a world-class player in America?
It's the culture. Going back, it's the culture. They just play and play and play.
Look, Tom Byer, who I don't know if you know who Tom Byer is. Tom, if you don't, you need to follow him, connect with him. He's done amazing work with youth soccer in Japan, and then doing work in China. He's actually in the States right now. He lives in Japan. He's an American, but he's in the States.
How do you spell Byer?
On a tour. B-Y-E-R.
Okay,
B-Y-E-R.
Got it.
Nice.
His Twitter username is @TOMSAN, Tomsan.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's his Japanese nickname. But Tom talks about this a lot if you follow him, and he says this, that culture eats plans, or eats systems, or eats education for breakfast. Like, he's always talking about culture trumps everything. Your initiatives, your programming, your coaching. Culture eats it all, because when you have a player that is a real soccer player, like, you watch him play and you go, dude, that guy or that kid knows the game, they stand out. And there's the only thing at that point, and Eric talks about this a lot, what as American coaches, what we often get wrong is not the development of players, it's the destruction of players. Mm-hmm. That oftentimes we find players that are really good and we destroy them rather than just not mess them up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, like you said, culture, it gets them to buy in. It gets the players to buy in, and that just means more.
Right. But it's also, it develops the IQ. They see the game. Oh,
my goodness. You brought up Soccer IQ. So I played for Chicago Magic pretty much my whole youth career.
Where some of these players come?
And it was a very big club. But I look back at my training. I think we had good training, but we never really talked Soccer IQ. We never really talked tactics. We never really just had these conversations. We were just taught how to do them on the field. And so that's something I look back and I'm very shocked at. I'm like, how did we not go in front of a whiteboard, draw some things out? We did stuff with cones, but we did not, give us a spiral. Let's write some things down and really teach us the game.
You're in class.
Yeah. And I did not get that from a club that I think was very good at the time. So
one thing I always see in these soccer documentaries is when Coach Pep Guardiola is at the front of the class, or if it's Sir Alex Ferguson, you zoom out. These players are sitting in desks like they're in a classroom, and he's at the front board like he's the professor. It's Professor Guardiola. It's time with Professor Sir Alex Ferguson. Yeah. It's Professor Coach. And we got to start thinking about it like that way, too.
Absolutely. Soccer IQ, you're right. The American soccer player is not smart. And it's because we kind of phase these
Not
kids
smart for
out.
this certain thing.
Because we kind of value, of course, I know this is going to sound cliche, but American football, we could value the physicality and pace, and sometimes we weed out those smaller, more technical guys.
I agree with you on the bigger, faster, stronger thing completely. And we don't even have to go down that rabbit trail, but I completely agree with you. But I want to make a quick point about American football, for example. Where I live, there's a little city that's a part of this Mobile metro area called Pritchard, Alabama. And it is, a really poor area of the community. And that area has churned out more players per capita than any other place in the country. And the reason why is the culture of American football, that you have volunteer coaches coaching Peavy football who are out there who know the game and teach the game.
Teach the game, exactly.
They're teaching players not just blocking and tackling and technique, but actually the tactics and plays and understand. And you see some of these kids, yes, are they great athletes? Absolutely. But they understand how to play football so that when a Nick Saban shows up at their high school recruiting you to come to play at the University of Alabama, you're not just getting a great athlete, you're getting a football player. And you put that with a great athlete and you see some amazing things, in Alabama football and other universities as well, and then eventually the professional level. Look, the city where I live, this is a suburb of Alabama. It is the actual city limits. The little town is 25,000 people in this little area. Now, we're in a collection of towns, but the actual city limit is 25,000 people. We have 6 kids from our high school right now in the NFL.
Oh, wow.
Wow. It seems like it's a culture of winning is least important and development is most important.
It's culture.
And in a lot of places in youth soccer in America, all the coaches are just like, I gotta win, and I'll develop along the way. But we got to change that.
Yeah, but look, I would say on development versus winning, I am not an either or. I'm a both and. I think that you are developing an all-around player when you teach them how to win at the same time that you are developing them to win. That mentality is so important because for you to understand the mentality of a winner means that you have to go someplace within yourself to pull energy out of yourself, even when you don't feel like it, even when you're tired. You've got to make that last pass. You've got to recover and win that tackle. You've got to, do the thing that you don't want to do because your body's telling you that, look, you've given enough.
Second effort.
So having a winning mentality is actually helps you develop into a better
positive
player.
Positive mentality too.
So when people say one or the other, look, there's definitely those who are all in on winning at all costs, screw development. Yeah. And then you have others who are like, look, the scoreboard doesn't matter. We're just out here trying to create better players. And my view is it takes both.
Absolutely.
If you teach them both in balance in the right way, they're dangerous players.
And you just reminded me, I think I'm biased because obviously I love soccer, the game of football. But I think soccer is the most mentally demanding sport. And I know that's very unfair to say because I haven't played the other sports at a high level, so I don't know. But, I mean, I think it's a game of experiences, and it's such a game of thought.
Just remember this.
Yes.
Yeah, just remember this. It never stops.
It never stops. And you're running, and you run 6 to 8 miles a game. Yeah,
you get timeouts in every North American sport. You get timeouts. Baseball, you get an inning change. You can call a timeout. Football, basketball, hockey doesn't matter. Yeah. Right? This is one of the things I actually talked about this on my podcast a little while back because I was at one of my son's games and a kid got hurt, and I heard from the sideline that this great American euphemism from a parent. Everybody take a knee. and I looked at my 8-year-old son, and he looks back at me, and he knows that I have a rule, and that is you do not kneel. You do not take a knee when somebody gets hurt. That is the moment in a true soccer culture. That is the moment when you walk to the sideline, you stay on the field, but you walk to the sideline, you get a drink of water, and you check in with your coach.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh!
Absolutely.
Whoa, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, again, that's what's so great about soccer is there's so many subtle nuances. And think about like when you're winning a game and you're trying to delay time. I mean, that's like there's so many small, subtle nuances in this game that I think make it amazing. Like I love this game.
You and me both.
What do we got, James? What else you got?
So let's start with there's a couple questions we had for you. And we were talking about the U.S. Soccer Federation. What is the Fed's responsibility to the nation and to its players and coaches?
So
to everybody, to even us who are recreation players or coaches.
Right. So here is my answer to that. I believe that a national federation should have a vision and a purpose of being a federation for all, period. And if that is your worldview as a federation, then it guides every decision, every policy, and every bylaw. That if you are a federation for all, it means that you are always trying to look out for the health and well-being of the entire system, top to bottom and back the other way. And what I see from the U.S. Soccer Federation is a top-down philosophy or worldview. That's why I say the whole thing is an elitist system. The worldview, even before you get into what we do, you have to go behind the what and figure out the why. What is the purpose? What is the why? And the Federation, for all of its pontificating about, we want to make soccer the preeminent sport in America, my argument is that if you did, then you would be a federation for all. You would make every decision based in that way rather than in the way that you make decisions now. So the federation should be servicing the professional game. It should be servicing the adult amateur game. It should be servicing the youth game. It should be educating parents. It should be all of those things. But the guiding worldview, the why, the purpose, if it was a purpose of being a federation for all, which means opportunity for all, access to all, then you make decisions differently than they make them. If you can't get up with a straight face and claim that if you represent the federation, that the United States Soccer Federation is a federation for all people. We have giant swaths of the country that are left out of the system at the highest levels. You have people with means and people without means who don't have access. So it's not based even on financial ability. It's based on being a closed system of control and gatekeepers.
Absolutely. I mean, think about when you go from U18, all of a sudden there's only a few D1 colleges that play soccer. D2, there's not many options out there. And so, actually, what are your thoughts on college soccer?
Well, I was encouraged the other day when I read that the ACC was looking at a proposal to revamp their scheduling to
all year
elongate the calendar.
Oh, that's amazing. It's amazing.
And so I think if they do that, I think it'll be good. I mean, look, college soccer is not the pathway to world class, but I do think while the federation continues to screw up with our professional leagues and our lack of a pyramid and system as FIFA mandates and they're in complete violation of, I think the college game can help, especially for players who, maybe they're not on a Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, Josh Sargent level, Christian Pulisic level, so that they're not players that are ready to go pro and play in Europe. So, maybe they can
Jordan
need
Morris.
some season, get some extra time, and so I think the college game can be that. I don't think that long term down the road that if the United States ever operates a FIFA compliant federation, meaning that they implement
promotion relegation,
solidarity payments, training compensation, all the things that FIFA requires. If they ever operate a FIFA compliant federation, I don't think college soccer will be a major
pipeline
part of that deal.
Mm-hmm.
This is decades down the road, because your better players are going to stay with their clubs. They're going to be working their way up the pyramid, and then the best players from those teams are going to get sold to other teams. They're not going to deviate to go to the college route as much.
Mm-hmm. And you might have one or two gems sneak through, but most of them are going to be coming through the academy system.
What's the deal with some MLS teams wanting to sell their academy systems?
Well, because they don't know what they're doing. I mean,
like this, the lifeblood of United, Southampton, some Eredivisie teams. I mean, it's a big thing.
but so MLS is now suffering from their own rules. This is the dangerous combination of ignorance and arrogance on full display. So for decades, Major League Soccer has colluded with U.S. Soccer to keep U.S. Soccer from being FIFA compliant.
I think so.
No promotion relegation, no solidarity payments, no training compensation. Now that they're losing players to Europe, and they are realizing that they're not getting compensated, especially on the level that they could or should have been getting compensated, because they didn't want to pay out. Now they're like, well, I mean, this is costing us, and what are we getting for it? And it's because they don't understand the business they're in on that level. The lifeblood of many clubs in the world is not being Barcelona. It's developing players and selling them on.
Southampton. It's Southampton.
Ajax.
It's Southampton. Ajax. I mean,
it's Ajax.
Ajax is a great example. There are clubs
even Barcelona
around the world
does
that can tell that story over and over again. I mean, look at what Monaco has done in the last few years. Look at Benfica.
They sold Mbappe for 120, 200 million.
Yeah. Well, how about Bilbao? How they only imagine Basque players? Right?
That would pay for the entire MLS's TV rights for 2 years for just one player. It's insane.
That's why when we hear these things that they're going to try and sell them, it's ludicrous to us. We're like, what? It's like.
So you were mentioning it, though, that there's kind of a problem with American soccer following the American sports model while operating in a sports market that is totally international and not anything like the American sports model, where the colleges are developing the NHL players and the NBA players and the NFL players, including hockey
Hockey
academies.
also has academy, yeah.
But
I mean, look,
hockey's just the worst.
I think the closest example to global football would be basketball, because I think one and done is as much as it's benefiting the Duke Blue Devils this year with Zion Williamson and
come to Chicago
guys out of there that are unbelievable basketball players.
Come to Chicago.
They're gone, and to the draft right after this year. So they're being developed, on the playgrounds and that pickup culture, that street culture. But generally in American sports, you're going to go to college and play, and then you're going to go professional. Whereas overseas, that system is just not really in place. And the reason why the system isn't in place overseas has to do with the ecosystem that is in place overseas. And that ecosystem is a system of mobility for clubs as well as for players.
Yeah,
and
you could be a Sunday League player like Jamie Vardy and then end up playing for Leicester City in the Premier League and raising the EPL trophy 8 years later. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Opportunity. Yep.
Absolutely. It's all about opportunity.
10 tiers down. That's how many tiers there were in the English system.
Yeah.
And he went up that. And there is no player mobility like that in the American system where you're going to play Sunday League and you're like, oh, wow, I might be able to end up in, maybe 2 levels up and actually make a couple bucks playing soccer.
Have you guys watched the documentary on Netflix, The Class of '92, where Giggs, Neville, both Neville, Skulls, Beckham, they bought Salford United?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good show. Check it out. And they're rising up. I think they're in Sky Bet League 1 or 2 right now.
Yeah, they are. Actually, and Skulls just might be getting a job as a coach, and they were saying, oh, he can't trade with these ones. You can't transfer with them, but otherwise he's good.
But still, unique opportunity again right there.
But meanwhile, America's playing this claw game at Chuck E. Cheese's while the rest of the world's playing that quarter game where they stick in a couple quarters and maybe 4 quarters, 20 quarters fall out and they get lucky. But America's like, one chance, $5, miss. Another 5, a miss.
Well, how many American superstars have missed? Freddie Adu. I'm blanking on the names, but all those young up-and-coming studs, a lot of them don't pan out.
Look, I would argue we have never had on a global level an American star.
Pulisic, closest thing, right? Closest thing.
I don't think he's there yet. I mean, I think obviously he's the biggest profile we've had, and obviously playing at Dortmund and now the transfer to Chelsea, and we'll see how that develops in the Premier League starting next year. I'm rooting for him. I mean, obviously I hope he finishes second behind Liverpool every year, but I hope he does well. I mean, I want our American players to do well. I want Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams.
Josh Sargent.
Didn't John Brooks just move to England?
I think he's still in Germany.
I thought Brooks just moved to England.
No, I think he's still in Germany.
I'm wrong.
I think he's still in Germany. But I want these guys, to do well, and raise the expectation levels for players here in America. For my kids and for other kids, I want them to aspire to be better than the generation before them, and so obviously them doing well is good. But I mean, to say that we've ever had a player on a global level that's a star is we're not even in the same galaxy.
Yeah.
As world-class players. I mean, you would not put Pulisic in the same breath of Maradona, Pelé.
No.
Messi,
Landon Donovan.
Hazard.
Landon Donovan, not even close. Not even close to those guys.
Not even close. No.
It's just like, yeah, dang, now you're making me sad.
Well, look.
But it's been good. We got some young up-and-coming dudes.
I want to make a quick important point, right? Because I talk a lot. I mean, the purpose of Soccer Works podcast is that I'm always kind of ripping apart, deconstructing global soccer, American soccer, so we can learn from it and figure out what we could do, what we could be, how great we could be, what we need to do to get better, right? All those things. There's an important point here. Realism, which does make you depressed or sad at times because you're like, man, we could be so much better than we are. Why aren't we not better? Realism, right, doesn't mean that you're wanting or that you enjoy banging on the system or accurately assessing what's in front of you. It's just the truth. And so what we do with that truth, I would argue, is the most important thing. That when we do honest evaluations of the American system, the U.S. Federation, the men's and women's national teams, the youth national team programs, everything that we do, if you were truly running this in a confident kind of business way, you would look at it and do evaluations, and you go, look, we're just not adding up. It's not good enough. Here. Okay, what do we got to do to get better? Instead, our federation doesn't do that. Instead, what our federation does is say, give us credit for trying. We're trying to do something. We've got 150 million. We didn't have it before, so give us some credit. When I look at it and going, 150 million, you should be doing $1 billion. Like, we're not even close. What are you talking about?
We're not even close to the NFL. You sent out that tweet the other day where you had all the American sports, and then you had MLS just at the bottom of fan money going into the game, and they're failing on so many degrees, like you're saying, and then
complete underperformance, and the truth is that MLS would be valued, I think, 10x of what it is today in an open system.
Oh, without a doubt. An open system changes the game. And then you have a player, maybe an awesome talker of the game like Alexi Valales, who says, go build a better mousetrap. And it's like, it doesn't work that way.
It separates itself from the rest of the American sports scene. If you don't have a good season, guess what? You're not tanking for draft picks. You're relegated.
You're relegated.
Right.
You're gone.
And what draft picks are you going to get in MLS?
Yeah.
Like the college system is not, it's not an American system. It's it's an international system.
Exactly. And look, it'd take a lot longer than to explain all the semantics. I covered this way back in the earlier episodes. I think it was around episode 31. I talked about how to build a better mousetrap of the SoccerWorks podcast. It's about 14 episodes where I get into some of this. But
is that on iTunes and everything? Your podcast, correct?
Yeah. And
on YouTube.
You can build a better mousetrap. It is possible. And I've gone through, I've detailed it. I've actually written a white paper on this. And it is totally possible to do what Alexi Lawless talks about. The part where I have an issue with Alexi and others who talk about a better mousetrap is they don't take into account the realities of how we got to where we are today and the realities of who's in charge today. So Major League Soccer has been propped up for 2 decades by the Federation. They have been picked as the winner by the Federation. They are in business with the Federation. So when you say, go build a better mousetrap, legally by the rules of U.S. soccer, it can be done. And I've detailed how to do that. But it's very disingenuous to not take into account the head start, the special favors, who gets to write the rules in terms of the professional league standards, who are on the committees, who's on the board of U.S. Soccer making the decisions of who gets to be designated as Division 1, 2, or 3, who gets to make the evaluation, who gets to write the rules for the evaluations, who does the checking on the facts and details. All of those things are influenced indirectly or directly or straight up controlled by Major League Soccer. So whenever you say build a better mousetrap, I can tell you exactly where to look in the rules to say it can be done, here's how it can be done, and you can totally build a better mousetrap. But you have to also acknowledge that mousetrap is going to be going up against an apparatus that is going to do everything in its power to destroy that said mousetrap.
I apologize, Dan. I got to leave. James is going to stay on. I got to head out, but it was great talking to you. Hopefully we have you on again. And thanks for coming on.
All right, Jeffrey.
See you guys. I got to go though.
All right, Jeffrey. We'll see you later. All right. Are you good to stay on for a little bit, Dan?
Yeah, I got a few more minutes.
All right, cool. Then we'll rattle off a couple questions, but definitely we would love to have you on again here. This has been awesome, the information that you're relating. And you're talking about the better mousetrap. The other thing that they have to compete against is this closed system versus the open system that is non-existent in American soccer and American sports that American sports fans would have to get used to. Right. And there's an example I point to, hashtag United over in England. It's a YouTube team. They've been a YouTube team for the past few years, and he got his team into the English system. And that's not possible in America. And that's what's so cool about England and about these other places that have the open public system with availability for players to do that.
Right. Totally. I mean, look, I tweeted a tweet out today talking about the difference between the U.S. system and the FIFA compliance system is that the FIFA compliance system is all about creating opportunities. That's opportunities for coaches, opportunities for clubs, opportunities for players, where the best talent, the best ideas, your merit is what matters. Not to say that there aren't roadblocks here and there with certain things, but in general, the system is built towards providing opportunities. When you look at the U.S. system, it is set up to create roadblocks, to create problems, not to grease the wheel so that you can be successful. It's to try to do everything in their power to keep you from being successful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at the U.S. closed system of leagues, you have Major League Soccer that they have deemed as Division I. They didn't earn it. No team in there has earned it. They've colluded with U.S. Soccer. They've written the rules in a way that said, look, your league is going to be sanctioned this way. You fulfilled these rules about metro market size, ownership net worth, neither of which have anything to do with soccer, in your competency level to run a club or your ability to put a good product on the field. And they've deemed Major League Soccer as Division I. Meanwhile, you've got USL designated as Division II. And U.S. Soccer would do everything in its power, and Major League Soccer as well, to prevent the USL from competing against Major League Soccer. They don't want Eric's team that he's managing in Las Vegas to be a better team on the field than
Toronto, who they beat
Toronto,
the other day,
who they demolished last Saturday, or Colorado, who they play next Saturday. They don't want teams at the lower levels being better than the teams at the higher levels. And the reason why is that they don't want opportunity. They really don't want development, because if you get into that situation where you have a Las Vegas Lights who is on the field, let's say hypothetically that at the end of this year, they're the best team in America. Like if you watch them play and you watch every other team in America play, you go, dude, they're the best team.
They win US Open Cup.
Right? Let's say they win the US Open Cup, right?
And they beat an MLS team to do so. A few.
Right, let's say they do that, right? So let's lay all these hypotheticals out. Let's just say all of that happens. U.S. Soccer is not celebrating that.
No.
Because what they are looking at is, man, they just hurt the market value of Major League Soccer. They just hurt the market appreciation of our franchises.
But not in a
Our
promotion
ability-
relegation system. They would have enhanced the value.
Correct. And that's why I'm saying everything we do is upside down and backwards.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely, I mean, it's not just different than the FIFA system. It's literally running into hell with a water pistol backwards. I mean, we're just not, it's not computing at all. And I'm going to bring back up this Jake Peavy thing I alluded to at the beginning.
Yeah.
So when Jake Peavy was drafted, he was drafted by the San Diego Padres. And San Diego's AA affiliate was the Mobile Bay Bears. So Jake Peavy very quickly moved up from single A baseball to double A. Guess where he was playing? In his hometown. The crowds on every night that Jake Peavy pitched were at capacity. Everybody wanted to watch the hometown kid succeed. And then he gets called up to the bigs. He bypasses AAA and goes straight to the bigs and plays in San Diego, has his career. I was talking about a year ago to a dad. He's a baseball guy. And his youngest son was playing soccer. He didn't know anything about the game. All he knows is, American sports, but his favorite sport of all is baseball. And I said to him, I said, here, I'm going to explain to you how the system works and how it should work. And I want you to tell me at the end of this what your thoughts are. And he goes, okay, shoot. So I told him the story of Jake Peavy. And I said, look, imagine that the Mobile Bay Bears was not a AA franchise of San Diego. Imagine if the Mobile Bay Bears were an independent baseball team. And they have Jake Peavy because he's a local kid. He came through their academy. He played on the Mobile Bay Bears, and they won the AA title. The next year, they're playing in AAA baseball. And let's say they do really, really well. And at the end of the next year, they win the AAA title. The next year, the New York Yankees are playing in Mobile, Alabama.
That would be insane. That would be insane.
And I said, now, on the other side, the Atlanta Braves have been terrible for the last 3 years. Imagine that Gwinnett Braves were not their AAA affiliate, but imagine that they were an independent baseball team and they won the AAA crown and they moved up, but the Braves were so terrible they went down to AAA and Gwinnett actually went up as an independent baseball team and were playing in the big leagues. Atlanta would still have Major League Baseball. It just wouldn't be with the Braves. It'd be with the Gwinnett team, not Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And when I got through explaining that, he was like, wow. He's like, so that's how soccer works? I said, around the world, not here, but around the world. That's how it works.
I've always thought this.
I said, now, here's what I want you to answer to me. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I want you to answer these to me as a baseball guy. If Mobile Bay Bears were an independent baseball team, and that scenario I just told you was reality, how focused would the Mobile Bay Bears be on their local community? How invested would they be in finding and developing the best baseball players that they could find? We know that Mobile has put people into the Hall of Fame. So I'm pretty sure we could find some Major League Baseball players that could quality talent and potential here in Mobile that could play on the Bay Bears. Do you agree with me? He said, yes. I said, what would that do? Would you think that every game would be sold out, especially if they're really good and they're moving up and they got local players stocked on their teams? He's like, absolutely. That's a no-brainer. Why don't we do that? And I said, that's how soccer's done around the world. And until we do it that way here, we are always going to be mediocre.
There is no way for the community club to get raised. And then you do something like what Chicago does, and you take the club out of the city, and then you lose some of the support. And then you also have prohibitive measures where Bridgeview has a clause that no other MLS club could play in around like 60 miles of Chicago. They have to play in Bridgeview. So there's all these prohibitive things, and also corporations, stadiums, advertisement, where they all say, oh, these are the things holding up. But when you look around the world, they have these systems in place. It's because this system is interlocked in already with people making money, that it's become $150 million to buy into MLS. And MLS is not going to, they can't risk the investors by making these changes. So we have business holding back business in America, and it's going to eat itself, in my opinion.
But this goes back to, how should the federation be set up? This is the problem with the United States Soccer Federation. It is not Major League Soccer's call. It's the federation's call.
But it's right now it is like Garber's call.
I agree with you. I agree. I'm not saying what what practically happens right now, what is actually in effect going on. But what I'm saying is what should be going on.
Yes.
Is that the federation is run by and serves all, not a special interest group, not a private business, should not have control of our federation. It should be a federation that is servicing all. The USL Championship, USL League 1, USL League 2, NPSL and NPSL Pro and NISA and all these other different projects that have been discussed, all of these things should be a part of the decision-making process of what U.S. soccer looks like and what the system should look like and how it should function, not Major League Soccer by themselves. And when you leave Major League Soccer, of course they're going to choose a monopoly for themselves, or at least monopolistic control for themselves, and in effect have a functioning monopoly, even though it may not technically be a full-out monopoly. The problem isn't Major League Soccer, it's U.S. Soccer. MLS is free to do whatever they want to do. I mean, if they want to continue to be, the WWE of soccer in the world, go for it. If you want to be a local soccer entertainment outlet and have franchises and people buy in and you run your own closed league thing, fine, go do that. If that's how you want to do it, do it. But the federation should not be giving them the power, unilateral power, over the rest of the clubs.
Yeah, they are helping them to outcompete everybody, is what you're saying.
Correct. So independent clubs, if you and your brother and a group got together and said, look, we're going to build the best club we can build, and we're going to put it right in the heart of Chicago.
FC United Chicago. Over in EPL. A couple of Manchester United fans created FC United, and they just put them into the open system of England.
Right. So you put a club in Chicago, right downtown. You want to build that thing as big as you can go, right? There is nowhere for you to go vertically based on FIFA's principle of sporting merit in American soccer.
There's no business, and then it doesn't make business sense to do it from that perspective because of this closed system. It's business stopping other business, and these things are going to eat each other, in my opinion, at some point in America.
I mean, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. My hope is, and what I work on every single day in connecting with people, trying to educate people, discussing behind the scenes with people that work in the federation on different levels and in leagues, etc. My hope is that enough people who understand what we should be doing, that FIFA compliance. I mean, I'm not advocating for, growing a third eye and a fifth ear and two tongues. I'm not saying we've got to go create a monster that's never been created before. All I'm saying is let's just do the rules that we're supposed to do. The FIFA rules that we're supposed to do. Let's just do that.
Let's start playing by the world's rules.
Right. And then let's just do that, and then let the market figure it out.
And the other thing about American sports,
figure it out.
I'm sorry. The other thing about American sports is really interesting too, that I've heard English and Europeans comment, is the stats. All the stats that are in other American sports that are kind of weren't in soccer. So America's been ahead of the game in some aspects when it comes to statistics and understanding what these statistics translate to as actionable judgments for on-field determination of how good a player is, essentially. Soccer's kind of just getting there, and America could have been miles ahead of that, but they're not.
Right. No.
Because they are ahead in the other games, in the other sports. That's probably why why women's soccer was ahead of the game for a little bit. But now maybe the world's games catching up to U.S. women's.
Well, look, I think that the bigger issue on the women's side has been that we've had such a big head start. Mm-hmm. Title IX, our women's college soccer programming. The rest of the world just didn't put any real time interest money into the game, and so we just had because we cared more, we were better. And so really we've always operated in a vacuum on the men's and the women's side. It's just on the women's side it looked like we knew what we were doing because no one else cared. Mm-hmm. Now that other countries are caring, I mean, just the other day there was over 40,000 for a women's Copa del Rey match in Spain.
Wow.
I mean, the Spanish national team, women's national team, the French national team, the German national team, the English national team, a lot of these countries are starting to really take it serious.
Manchester United just opened up a women's club. They hadn't done it for years. There was other English clubs that have, but Manchester United now.
Right, and so that you're going to start to see our dominance on the women's side has been primarily one of a head start.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've got to do, is take our advantage. We still have a head start. I mean, we're still, at the top of the pecking order in terms of the women's game. We're right there at the top. If we're not number one, we're in the top 5. I mean, we're right there. So we're a power. I mean, you go to a World Cup, everybody's got the Americans circled of one of the favorites to win.
You go to Chicago, the Chicago Sky have some top players from around the world. They have the best maybe the best player in the world in Sam Kerr from Australia. They have a player from Japan. They got a couple of Americans. Ertz, whose husband plays for the Philadelphia Eagles. The team in Chicago is very good.
Right.
And there's some national team players. And women's soccer is definitely, it's good in America. It seems like it's in a good place in America. I'm not sure if you agree.
Well, I think the system suffers,
Mm-hmm.
in the same way that the men's system suffers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, we instead of learning from our mistake in the creation of Major League Soccer in the 2 decades since, we did exactly the same thing and started the NWSL. And so I think that there's going to be some ramifications, because as the professional leagues in Europe start to become more lucrative, our women's players are going to leave.
Yeah.
They're going to go over to Europe. They're going to get paid a lot better. They're going to play in front of better crowds.
Well, that's good. That's a good thing.
It is, but it shouldn't be.
Oh, it's a good thing for the players, not a great thing for the American game, maybe,
right.
as a whole.
And that's what you were asking me about the women's game, not the women's players. So the women's game is going to suffer because we should have that here. We should have. I mean, of all the soccer conversations that we've had and about systems and culture and all of this, and to me, the biggest no-brainer is America should be the home of the greatest women's soccer league in the world.
Wow. Just like the EPL or the La Liga is always competing, America should be the leader for the. I agree. That's a great point.
Why not?
Why not?
Why shouldn't
we have the players
on the global stage? Why shouldn't we?
And they have the infrastructure.
We have the infrastructure. We have everything. Why? So, to me, this is another example of failure for U.S. Soccer as a federation.
Failure to the players in U.S. Soccer from the federation.
Failure to the communities. Failure to coaches, to owners, to all of it. I just think that U.S. Soccer is completely underperforming no matter what area you look at. If you're looking at minority participation, if you're looking at socioeconomic status, if you're looking at the women's game, if you're looking at the men's game, if you're looking at access to, licensing and coaching education, if you're looking at referee, licensing and education. I mean, no matter where you look at, to me, compared to what the U.S. could be and should be, we are the greatest sports economy on earth. And yet, our top league shares $90 million a year in TV revenue with the federation. Yeah. It's a joke.
It's a joke.
It is. It's just a joke. It's ridiculous. The fact that we have journalists that don't challenge this on a daily basis is ridiculous. And I understand why a lot of them don't, because their jobs are in jeopardy. Their companies are in business with the federation and with Major League Soccer, and there's a lot of pressure there to not buck the system and not to challenge.
Not shake the boat.
Not to shake the boat, exactly. I get it. But the truth is, until we have a free press that challenges and holds accountable our federation as well as all aspects of soccer, and I don't mean this in an adversarial, combative way. I just mean, tell the truth, document, explore, investigate, report that, and let the public decide, but don't just gloss over or make excuses for, or just completely throw into a vacuum stories that would be highlighting some of the issues that we need to solve.
We need more.
We have that free press challenging that. We're, America, like the average soccer mom and soccer dad, they don't know. I mean, all they know is they're taking their kids to practice.
We need more Twellman rants. We need more Taylor Twellman rants about what's wrong, because they're not saying enough about what's wrong. But that right. Taylor Twellman rant was amazing because it was nailing it, and we need more of that, maybe daily, until we get it in the heads. We'll start wrapping it up here.
Did you notice, though? I just want to make this point. Did you notice that after that rant, within 24 hours, he was a no-show on ESPN for a while?
Yep, for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, she shook the boat.
Yeah.
But he's still, Taylor is one of the best, soccer maybe voices that we got for America, who is able to sometimes call it like it is, at least sometimes.
Oh, look, this is nothing against Taylor. I'm talking about the system.
Oh yeah. That he's got to go against that.
My comment wasn't about Taylor. I believe I've heard enough from Taylor and from people that know Taylor. I don't know him personally, but to believe that he wants the right things to happen in American soccer. I don't doubt that for a minute.
Absolutely.
So my comment had nothing to do with Taylor. It had to do with the system.
Oh, sure.
What I was talking about before. But the pressure doesn't come. It's not these journalists or these media people that are going, look, I don't want to talk about it. It's other pressure that's keeping that from happening.
Sure thing. All right, we'll start wrapping it up here with a couple. I just got a few more questions that maybe you could cover real quick for us, and then we'll kind of wrap it up.
All right, let's go rapid fire.
The rapid fire. But if you could, as quickly as you can, explain what was that last U.S. federal election with Cordeiro, with Martino, with the U.S. soccer goalie Hope Solo, with Wynalda. What happened there? If you could quickly kind of just say what broke down, who won, were there factions, and I mean, if you could kind of give us because when watching it from the outside, you hear all these great things from Wynalda and from Martino, and then Cordeiro wins. And it just made no sense to me as a soccer follower of wanting what's best for the game in America. When I hear the guys who have the ideas, who have the good ideas, not win.
Right. So here is the election story in a quick nutshell. Now, to unpack this, and there's a lot to unpack, we'll have to do it on another show.
Yeah, we'll do it on another show, sure.
We'll have to do it, take a lot longer time. But here's it in a nutshell. The election system, the process of the U.S. soccer elections, is set up to elect Carlos Cordeiro and not a reform candidate.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So if you understand the U.S. government elections, presidential election, where you have the electoral college,
right? There
is a very, very screwed up version of that system, but it is so awful. The actual process, it's intentional. It's done so that people think their vote is worth a lot, and in many cases it's not worth hardly anything. And then you have some people that have disproportionate power, voting power, given to them instead. So it's not really a fair fight in terms of the election process and how it's laid out. So that's the short answer. To get into like the actual, back and forth behind the scenes, Wynalda, Martino, all these different, Cordeiro, Kathy Carter, I could walk you through that, and we'll just have to do that on another episode.
We'll get into another. That's awesome. Yeah, we'd be glad to have you on. So a couple more rapid fires. You talked about artificial scarcity in an episode where you're talking about the crew situation in Austin and how that broke down with MLS. If you could briefly mention what's going on there.
So artificial scarcity is basically where you have a closed system, and that's the U.S. sports model. Started with Major League Baseball, and they got antitrust exemption, and then that's kind of permeated through the NFL, later the NBA, and now Major League Soccer. And what they do is they basically have gatekeepers, limited access to their league, and by doing that, they get to create a what I call artificial scarcity, meaning that right now we're only going to have, let's say, 24 slots. So even if you can afford it, we're not going to let you in. And what that does is it artificially inflates demand. It inflates prices. People are often put in the situation of having to vote for higher taxes to keep their sports team, and they are literally having to subsidize billionaires because the billionaires know that, well, look, I'm the Oakland Raiders. If you don't give me the deal I want, I'm going to pull up and go to Vegas
and make a little more money there.
Says, we're not going to do it. Vegas says, we'll build it. So that's the story of Columbus and Austin in MLS. Major League Soccer was, they tried to go to Columbus and get a sweetheart taxpayer funded deal, and Ohio and Columbus didn't give them the terms set up the way they wanted, whatever, and so they're like, fine, well, we're going to take your franchise and move it somewhere else, and you're not going to have one. And so then obviously they had a PR nightmare, thanks to all of the hashtag Save the Crew faithful, many of whom we met on the campaign tour, and the pressure that they created ultimately meant that Don Garber capitulated and brought in an owner to keep the Crew in Columbus.
Well, apparently Arthur Blank or something, the Atlanta guy, talked to, what was it, the Cleveland owner to help him
Haslam.
To help him buy in.
Yeah, the Haslam guy. I mean, look, the truth is that artificial scarcity is a horrible problem on many levels. Like the election, it would take a lot longer to unpack all of the different ways that it has adverse effects on U.S. soccer and the American soccer system. But one of the biggest problems is taxpayer funding for stadiums and projects that if it was an open system, that pressure would not be there. You wouldn't be moving your team.
Very true.
You'd be staying and just figuring out how to make it work.
Very true. So the Fire was involved with a little weird thing happening over this weekend or the past few days with their own homegrown player, Gutman, who got signed by Celtic, was loaned back to Nashville, who was apparently going to be entering into MLS and is subject to MLS rules. And so his loan had to be canceled after the fact, thus looking like a very bad PR move where MLS is kind of stopping a player's growth.
Well, this goes back to centralized, closed leagues, single entity leagues. You are not an independent club. The Chicago Fire are a franchise. They are the McDonald's of Chicago, and playing the McDonald's of Columbus and the McDonald's of New York City and the McDonald's of Atlanta.
Wow. Whoa. Yeah. Instead of like playing the Burger King of Indianapolis versus the White Castle of Chicago versus
Correct.
the McDonald's of Wisconsin or something.
Right. They're not independent clubs. So they are, even though their branding says they're the Chicago Fire, they are actually Chicago MLS.
Yeah. They're all MLS.
All of the player paychecks come from MLS headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
They don't come from the Chicago Fire.
MLS owns the rights of the players.
Correct. The league does.
Mm-hmm.
The league owns the players. The league pays the players. Chicago Fire do not pay the players.
Mm-hmm.
So that system means that there's this centralized control, and so you can't just go get the player you want. I mean, if you are if you were, you know, Ajax and you find an amazing kid at another club
At Notts
and
County,
you want to buy him, and it's in the transfer, and in the transfer window's open, you go get the kid, and there's no someone at the Eredivisie, the top Dutch league, saying to Ajax, "Oh, sorry, you can't bring in that kid from Notts County because we didn't like that deal. Like we think you should have gotten more for the kid, or you paid less for the kid,
or he's got to go to another team in the league. He can't go to a team in this league."
Right, because you guys are already too good. You can't have him too. Like that's not how global soccer works. This is part of the sham that is perpetrated on the U.S. system.
I think that's what this issue really brought to light, is that of the sham of the MLS system too, and then it's kind of shining a light on that for all players who are looking at MLS, whether they're youth or older.
Right. I mean, the truth is that there are several franchises in MLS that don't operate as they should operate if they were Division One. If they truly were operated as a Division One team. And in a promotion relegation system, they would have already gone down, and they may have gone down multiple times.
Fire would have been real far down.
Like Sunderland, you know?
Yeah.
It might have been like Sunderland and gone down again.
Portsmouth, another one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's you know, the truth is there are a few franchises that try to do things the right way and try to be competitive and, you know, under the MLS rules that are making you play with one hand tied behind your back. But beyond that, I mean, there's quite a few that they're there because they want access to Soccer United marketing, because that's where the money is. The money's in Soccer United marketing. They get a big chunk out of the Mexican national team rights from you know, U.S. broadcasts and U.S. matches, and they get money out of the U.S. national team. They get a lot of things, and that so when people are going, man, they're spending $150 million to get in, you know, they're buying into Major League Soccer, but what they're really buying into is access to Soccer United marketing.
It's like a Ponzi scheme.
In a way, because that other company, Soccer United Marketing, is where they're making most of their money. And the beautiful thing for the owners is that they can turn around and cry poor to the MLS players, saying, "Look, we're losing money." And technically, if you look at the books, they are, but they're doing that because they're keeping all their money in the Soccer United marketing side of the ledger from all of these other things going on. So they're profiting off of U.S. soccer without being good for U.S. soccer.
Yeah, and it's almost like a leech.
In a way, I mean, it's
parasite.
definitely. I would not say it's a symbiotic relationship.
It's not.
I think it's more of a parasitical relationship.
That's really what it seems. And that brings me to my last question here. By the way, toss us a like, smash that like button if you enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having Daniel Workman on today. Hit the bell button to get notified of our live streams and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Take the time. Much appreciated if you do. Last question here for you before we ask you for your final thoughts. Upcoming MLS CBA. Just anything you got on it.
I have no faith in the MLS Players Association. I think that, you know, what we saw in the last, you know, back and forth of discussions on the last deal, I felt like they were really weak, and I don't expect much to change going forward. It's not run and operated like the Major League Baseball Players Association, and so because of that, I think that the whole system is set up for MLS to do what it wants to do, and the Players Association knows that and is thus weak in terms of pushing for reforms that need to take place.
Does the MLS TV deal play into the CBA at all? The future MLS TV deal? I think it's in 2022 or something like that.
I mean, I'm sure it'll be part of that conversation. But until you've got a TV deal that's, I mean, you got to understand that the Premier League clubs are bringing home by themselves
like 120
almost,
million?
Yeah, I mean, more than the entire deal.
Just by an individual club.
Right.
Let alone split between the U.S. Federation and the 22, 23 MLS teams that there are, 24.
Right, exactly.
Well, thank you for your time, Daniel. Last few thoughts. If you, hopefully we can get you on the podcast again. That's awesome. Thank you for taking the time to do so. But any last thoughts you want to kind of leave the our Chicago Fire fans with, or the U.S. Men's National Team, anybody who's listening to the podcast?
Right. My final thought is this: that I believe that American soccer could be and should be the greatest soccer power on earth. And if we, as we did decades ago, dreamed of becoming the first country to put a man on the moon, if we make that our mission and our vision and our purpose, I think we can do it. And I hope that others around the country aspire to that same end and are willing to look at what we do and what we could do better so that we can get there. That's what I operate on every day.
That's what the mission of U.S. soccer should be. Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dan, for taking the time and coming on here. Everybody, like and subscribe. And any comments below, we'll take a look at them. And we'll fire it up, footballers. We'll see you guys next time for another episode of Spitting Fire YT. All right, guys, later. All right, shut her down. Thank you for coming, everybody.